You've been told the national debt is going to wipe out your retirement. Almost all of that is wrong. But one part is true, and it's already happening to you. The debt just passed $38 trillion, dollars, and the news keeps hammering the same three words: collapse, the dollar's doomed, your savings are worthless. Here's what's actually true. The United States is not going bankrupt like a family that maxed out its credit cards. Your dollars are not about to turn into monopoly money. And no, you do not need to sell everything and bury gold in the backyard. But here's the part that matters, so don't relax just yet. The debt is going to reach your retirement, just not the way the doomsday channels scream. It won't arrive as a sudden crash. It'll arrive as a slow, quiet tax through a few forces you can actually see coming and plan around. And there's a single number that makes it impossible to ignore. Last year, for the first time in modern history, it crossed a line almost nobody saw coming. Once you see what it crossed, you can't unsee what this debt is quietly doing to your retirement. No politics, no panic, just the math. Nearly $39 trillion, dollars, and it's growing by trillions more every single year. But here's the first thing the doom merchants get wrong. A government that borrows in its own currency is not like your household budget. You have to pay off your mortgage. The federal government never actually pays the whole thing off. It just keeps rolling it over, borrowing new money to cover the old. That sounds reckless, and the trajectory really is a problem. But here's why it matters to you. The bet that America goes bankrupt next year has lost every single year for decades. So take that specific fear off the table. The country isn't going to suddenly default and shut the doors. The danger is slower and quieter, and it has your name on it. Let me show you how. If you remember one number from this whole video, make it this one. For the first time in modern history, the federal government now spends more just paying the interest on the debt than it spends on the entire military. About $1 trillion a year, just on interest. That's roughly $3 billion a day, every day, going to nothing but the interest on money already spent. And it's the fastest growing line in the entire budget. Why should you care about a government accounting line? Because every dollar swallowed by interest is a dollar that can't reach you. Social Security, Medicare, the things you're counting on. The interest bill is quietly crowding out your retirement, and that's not a prediction. That's already happening. A $1 trillion interest bill sounds abstract until it reaches into your wallet. It does that three different ways. The first is inflation. When a government runs enormous, year after year deficits and piles on debt, the long-run pressure on prices tends to push in one direction, up. And inflation is the single most dangerous enemy a retiree has. Why you specifically? Because the paycheck that used to rise with prices is gone. Now you're living off savings and a fixed check. And every year, inflation quietly shrinks what they buy. I'm not telling you to expect wheelbarrows of cash for a loaf of bread. That's the doomsday cartoon. The real threat is quieter. The steady, grinding erosion that a high-debt world tends to produce, slowly shrinking what your money can actually buy over a 30-year retirement. And inflation is only the first hand reaching into your pocket. The second one is sneakier, because most people are dead sure it works the opposite way. The second way the debt reaches you is through taxes. And here's a fact almost nobody believes when they first hear it. By historical standards, federal income tax rates today are low, not high, low. For most of the last century, top rates were far above where they sit now. So when you've got $1 trillion a year going to interest and a mountain of debt that only grows, the long-run math points one way. Over time, taxes are far more likely to go up than down. And here's why that should matter to you specifically. If your retirement savings are sitting in a traditional 401k or IRA, that money has never been taxed. You pay the tax when you pull it out, at whatever the rates are then. So a higher tax future, driven by the debt, takes a bigger bite out of every dollar of your retirement. The debt doesn't send you a bill. It just quietly raises the price of using your own savings. And if that one stings, the third pressure is the one that hits closest to home, because it's a check almost everyone watching is already counting on. The third pressure has a name. You already know it. Social Security. Social Security and Medicare are the two biggest pieces of the federal budget. And a government drowning in interest payments? It has a harder time funding them, You've probably heard that Social Security's trust fund is running low. Here's the honest version. The official projection has it reaching a shortfall around 2033. Do the quick math on that. If you're in your 50s right now, that lands right in the heart of your retirement. And if Congress does nothing, the cut isn't a rounding error. It's roughly 23% off every check automatically. Picture a $2,000 monthly benefit. That's about $460 a month. Gone. Read that carefully because the doomsayers distort it. It does not mean Social Security disappears. Even with zero changes, it would still pay about 77 cents on the dollar from ongoing taxes. But a 23% cut to your check is very real money, and the debt is exactly what makes that gap so hard to close. Here's where the doom industry makes its money by scaring retirees like you. Most of what they sell is junk. The dollar is not about to collapse. In every crisis, including ones that started in America, the entire world runs toward the dollar because it's still the safest asset on earth. Your bank deposits aren't about to vanish either. They're insured by the FDIC. That's real and it isn't going anywhere. And you do not need to dump your investments and pile into gold and cash and canned goods. In fact, that's the cruelest trap of all, because cash and gold sitting on the sidelines get quietly devoured by the very inflation we just talked about. The national debt is a slow leak. It is not a sinking ship. And you treat a slow leak completely differently than you treat an iceberg. Let me show you the two ways people respond. Meet David. David watched a stack of doomsday videos, got scared, and acted. He sold his stocks, moved everything into cash and gold, and waited for the collapse. The collapse never came. But inflation quietly ate his cash year after year, and the market he ran away from kept climbing without him. David protected himself from a crash that didn't happen and walked straight into the slow tax that did. Susan took the other road. She didn't try to predict the debt. She positioned for it. She stayed invested so her money could outgrow inflation. She moved a chunk into Roth accounts. Now a higher tax future can't touch it. And she kept her plan flexible instead of betting everything on one doomsday call. Same debt, same scary headlines. One reacted in fear and one planned in calm. Remember that number from the start? The interest bill that now tops the entire military? David let it scare him out of the market. Susan let it tell her where to position. This isn't a guarantee. It's the difference a calm plan tends to make. One last thing, and it's the only part of this you actually control. You cannot fix the national debt. It is, quite literally, trillions of dollars above your pay grade and mine. But here's the good news. That was never your job. Your job isn't to save the country's balance sheet, it's to debt-proof your own. Stay invested so inflation can't quietly tax you on the sidelines. Diversify where your money is taxed so a higher rate future can't ambush you. And do not bet your retirement on a collapse that the loudest voices have been wrongly predicting for 40 straight years. The national debt will not end your retirement with a bang. But ignore how it actually works, and it can end it with a whisper, one eroded dollar, and one extra tax at a time. Plan for the slow tax instead of the imaginary crash, and you are going to be just fine. One last thing, and it matters. Most people only learn this stuff after it's too late to do anything about it. So if you're anywhere near retirement, subscribe. Every week I break down one more of these money decisions in plain English. No politics and no panic, so you see it coming while you can still plan around it. Don't learn it the hard way. I'll see you in the next one.